Hey, what's going on, everybody? How y'all doing? Appreciate all y'all that's continuing to follow me. I'm just new to this whole TikTok thing. But at the end of the day, it's your boy Trade the Truth Teller on this platform. We like to tell the truth. And today we got somebody that's lying. That's Kamala Harris. So we're going to let the professionals tell y'all, break all her policy down. We broke one down yesterday. We about to break another one down today. And people from CNN going to break it down. So we're gonna let people that's on her side break down the lies. Hey.
Work to pass the first ever federal ban on price gauging on food.
Harris,
thank you for asking.
Price fix.
Thank you for
Do you
asking.
have any feelings on it? Yes, yeah.
I unequivocally hate socialism. Socialism destroys innovation, destroys productivity, and destroys individual liberties. Agriculture and food markets have insanely competitive dynamics because there are commodity markets, there are tons of competitors, there is no monopoly in making food, there is no monopoly in making CPG products, there is no monopoly in retail, there is no monopoly in grocery stores. It is a small margin, highly competitive, highly fragmented, free market. And the free market works in that everyone is always competing with each other, creating new productivity improvements, and as a result, over time, prices come down, except when the government intervenes and gets involved. So I would argue that the real cause of price inflation in food is not the supposed price gouging by corporate players in the ag and food industry, all of whom are deeply competitive with one another, but rather is the result of the inflation associated with government spending and stimulus coming out of COVID. Nick, Exhibit 1. The Fed balance sheet. From COVID to today, the Fed balance sheet grew from $4.2 trillion to $7.2 trillion, a growth of 70%. The Federal Reserve went out and they bought assets and they issued debt to banks and introduced liquidity into the system. If you go to the next slide, as a result, the M2 money supply increased from 15 trillion to 21 trillion since COVID, a 40% increase. Okay, so now there is more money in the system, so the cost of everything should go up, which is exactly what we've seen. We can walk through a couple of the other commodity price charts from the St. Louis Fed. Here is the price of electricity. As an example, the price of electricity has gone up a little bit less than the M2 money supply. But the truth is, when you start to actually look at ag commodity prices over time, what's happened is there was certainly a boost coming from COVID, but the competition and the challenges in overproduction in the ag markets has started to hit and started to bring prices back down. So here's the price of strawberries. Strawberries today are selling for less than they were pre-COVID. Potatoes are now back to where they were pre-COVID. Now, let me give you some statistics on some of the supposed price gouging companies in the industry. Kraft Heinz stock pre-COVID was 29 bucks a share. Today, Kraft Heinz stock is 34 bucks a share. 2019 revenue of 25 billion, 2023 revenue of 26 billion. EBITDA in 2019 of 6.1 billion, EBITDA in 2023 of 6.3 billion. There's not a lot of profit gouging. In fact, Kraft Heinz has not been able to keep up with the inflation.
However, if you listen to Jay
Masterclass in sticking to the script, keeping things very voter friendly, keeping the details incredibly light, and not talking about how you have to pay for it all. If Donald Trump is sort of Harry Potter in terms of the magician for his policies, this was a bit Hermione Granger. It wasn't even just about not paying for it. She said she was going to reduce the deficit despite all these giveaways as well. And I understand that's politics at this moment, but I think your point is so accurate when she was talking about all of the things that are impacting people, whether it's high prices, and we know prices have soared over this administration, unaffordability crisis in housing. I mean, house prices, the median house price is up 20% over the past 3 years. So she did a great job, I think, of changing the narrative, which is reflected so poorly on President Biden, to try and make it more optimistic about what she's going to do. Just to give you a snapshot of some of the things that she said in the price gouging comments, I just don't know how that federal ban is going to work. If they're talking about directly targeting prices, it will require some form of act of Congress. Isolating how and where price gouging is taking place is very difficult. She talked about the profits of grocery stores. Their margins are incredibly thin. For every dollar sale, they make profit profits of around 1 to 3 cents. Just try proving that their price gouging is going to be incredibly difficult beyond anything else. On housing, she said at the end of her first term, she hopes to have those 3 million houses built. But in order to do that, a lot of these home builders, and they are saying that they'll provide incentives, they're going to have to borrow money, and we know interest rates are really high, so a lot of that's going to depend on mortgage rates coming down, which could end up fueling house prices even higher if people start buying. But also home builders are going to want to be able to borrow at lower rates as well. I mean, I can pick out a whole host of other things where the devil's going to be in the detail, and it's all going to be about the execution. But I will say very quickly, I like the way that she compared and contrasted with
agenda. I mean, inflation is the number one issue, food prices, housing costs, the housing shortage. All of that is absolutely true. And she and Joe Biden are in charge, and she has directly cast votes that have led to these conditions. So I don't know how she plans to separate herself from Joe Biden on this, because everything she talked about today, she has a direct hand in. The other thing that I picked up on today was this whole notion that price gouging, or gauging, as she called it, is what people are feeling. That is a total canard. This is not true. This is made up because they're trying to deflect attention from the actual inflation that has caused everything in your life to get more expensive. So they need the American people to believe something other than the truth. There is no price gouging. Grocery stores, these things, they operate on very slim profit margins. There is no gouging. There is just inflation. So to go out and say, oh, I'm going to get the federal government involved in setting prices or capping prices or interrupting the flow of the free market economy, let me tell you something. If you like bread lines, product shortages, black markets, hoarding, if you want to recreate the happy economic conditions of the Walking Dead, Kamala Harris has a plan for you. The bottom line is the Republicans are going to be all over this. It's not smart, and it's a plan from a ticket that has no private sector experience and no interest whatsoever in taking responsibility for everything they have done to plunge the working class of the United States of America into an economic crisis.
Two things. I think number one, she took a lot of far left positions during her first run in 2019 and 2020. She has, temporarily kind of moderated these through some anonymous quotes from aides saying, well, she doesn't really want to ban fracking anymore. She doesn't want to do this, doesn't want to do that. This new program that she's kind of doing is pretty far left, $25,000, price controls essentially. That's number one. But the other thing is, kind of conveniently forgot she was vice president for the last 4 years when a lot of the housing market crisis was at its worst, when inflation was at its worst. So there's a lot of memory holding that. But look, when it comes to the $25K, I mean, you just added $25,000 into every price on every home price in the country, because if you're giving that away essentially for free, people will add it into